patiently listening to all of this. There is an issue and a difference between what is practical and realistic and whether it would make a real difference when it comes to the variants. Let's just test what Labour is actually proposing. You want a comprehensive hotel quarantine system. It would apply to all UK arrivals, not just those coming from this red list of countries. But there would be exceptions. So haulage is one exception we heard from your Shadow Home Secretary. Any others?
Well, I think the general public will be bemused by what we've just heard and the fact that when we're looking at a crisis of this scale, that our borders are still open. And when we can see countries like Australia and New Zealand that have made real progress as island nations in limiting travel to that country and then having proper quarantine measures when they get there, then I think the delay is simply unacceptable. We've got the deepest recession of any industrialised country and one of the highest death tolls. And the lesson for me, surely, from the pandemic is to act faster, act bolder and act quicker. And that's not what, sadly, we're seeing from this. Of course, there should be a certain number of exceptions to
and what are they?
Well, you've mentioned haulage. I don't have all that full list of exceptions in front of me at the moment. But the key thing is that at the moment, people are able to fly into the country and they're able to travel within there when actually we're making huge progress with the vaccine. There's a huge amount of effort that's been positive, but we risk undoing that work and letting in mutated versions of the virus, both from those countries that have had them identified, but also from countries where the identification capacity doesn't yet exist.
Right.
So there could be additional mutations entering our country. And that's why having a comprehensive quarantine seems to be not only the prudent thing to do, but it's something that, if we listen to the language of ministers, should have already have happened. But isn't. And that's why people are finding it frustrating.
All right. So there are some exceptions, you say, under your policy. But let me just put this scenario to you, Luke, because under Labour proposals, if someone living in Northern Ireland, for example, wanted to attend a funeral in the Republic of Ireland, when they came back, your plans would mean that that person would have to quarantine in a hotel at their own cost, and it's estimated to be around £1,500 per person, let's say, for the duration of the quarantine. Is that correct?
Forgive me, because I don't know the finer details of how that would work across the Northern Ireland border. And I think Northern Ireland is a clear exception.
All right, well, say they're coming from somewhere else. Don't worry too much about that, but just what would happen to them and what they would have to incur in terms of cost. You're saying that anybody that would go and visit somebody outside of the UK and then came back into the country, and let's say it was for a funeral, death in the family, they would have to stump up £1,500 worth of costs in order to stay in a hotel under your policy.
Well, what we're saying is people shouldn't be leaving the country and returning because that risks the increase of the virus spreading. Where there are people travelling across international borders, it's right that there's a quarantine put in place, and it's right that those people obey that quarantine at the moment, and that there's proper checking, because we don't have that system at the moment. 98% of people aren't being checked whether they're self-quarantining at the moment when entering the country, according to those latest stats, and that is really worrying. So the proposal that we're putting forward, that I think enjoys widespread public support, is that people should quarantine in a hotel. Those hotel spaces are largely empty at the moment. As someone who used to work in the travel industry for the Association of British Travel Agents, believe me, there's an awful lot of travel agents at the moment that could assist the government in booking hotel rooms if they wanted to gain that help. But look, it's too slow. That's the fundamental problem here.
Right,
there's so much progress, so much effort been made, but we're risking it by allowing people to enter the country without those restrictions properly being in place.
But Luke, this policy and delivering it may not actually also be straightforward. Can I just ask again what Joe said? I mean, this is a point of principle. If somebody wanted to go to the funeral of a loved one in another country, and then you were saying they had to quarantine when they came back, would Labour expect them to stump up the costs of staying in a hotel for a quarantine period because they wanted to go to the funeral of a loved one in another country?
Well, I think that there was an enormous number of difficult decisions that people have to take at this time. What we're suggesting is that for people that are entering the UK, coming back into the UK or coming here for the first time, that they should quarantine, and there will
But who should bear the cost? Because this is what, this is not a straightforward thing. You sound straightforward to call for it, but there are, as you say, many difficult decisions. So, on point of principle, if somebody has to travel for that kind of compassionate reason, should they have to bear the cost? Because this is one of the difficult decisions to make.
Well, it certainly is, and there are no easy answers to this, I'm afraid. I would love to be able to provide that reassurance, but these are difficult decisions that need to be taken here, and that's why it is really hard. You know, as someone who's lost loved ones during the crisis, you know, there are decisions that are about, you know, attending funerals and paying last respects that are deeply difficult and personal decisions to make. But at this very moment, the increase or the numbers of people travelling internationally are risking a spread of mutated versions of the virus. That's putting the huge efforts of the vaccination programme at risk. So there will be some really difficult circumstances. Of course there will.
All right.
And I'm not denying that won't be the case. But I think this, on the whole, is something that we absolutely need to get on top of the virus and to really maximise the benefits of that vaccination programme that is at the moment going so well, but needs to continue going well. And that's why we need to control any imports of mutated versions of the virus from abroad.
Right, Mims, we hear from the Prime Minister and other ministers.